Did you ever wonder how the home items we grew up with in the 1970s could end up being illegal now? These ordinary things shaped daily life so completely that no one imagined they could quietly harm us. So what hidden dangers were sitting in our homes all along? Lead paint on interior walls and woodwork was once the gold standard for any home looking to impress. The rich, glossy finish covered everything from bedroom walls to kitchen cabinets, and the colors seemed to last forever without fading or chipping. People trusted it because it covered beautifully, dried quickly, and felt like the modern choice for families in the 1970s. Parents painted nurseries and playrooms without a second thought, believing they were creating cheerful spaces for their children. Nobody imagined that the surfaces their kids touched and breathed near were releasing something dangerous. As paint aged, it cracked into chips that created dust drifting through the house. Researchers connected lead exposure to brain damage, learning disabilities, and behavioral problems in children. By the time regulators banned lead paint, millions of homes were already coated. Families were left wondering what they had unknowingly done to the children they tried to protect. It remains one of the most haunting reminders that walls meant to shelter us once carried poison hidden in their shine. Asbestos vinyl floor tiles were the flooring of choice for kitchens, basements, and bathrooms throughout the 1970s because they were affordable, durable, and easy to install. Homeowners loved the patterns and the way they resisted moisture better than hardwood. Contractors recommended them constantly, and hardware stores stacked them high in every aisle. People walked across these tiles barefoot, mopped them weekly, and never suspected the material keeping them sturdy was slowly becoming deadly. The problem began when tiles aged, cracked, or needed replacement. Cutting or breaking old tiles released microscopic asbestos fibers into the air, fibers so small they lodged deep in the lungs. For years, families renovated without masks, creating clouds of invisible contamination in their own homes. Researchers linked asbestos exposure to mesothelioma and fatal lung diseases, and the ban followed with grim urgency. Today, removing old asbestos flooring requires hazmat suits, sealed work areas, and professional disposal. It is unsettling to think that a kitchen floor could quietly become one of the most dangerous surfaces in the home. Ungrounded two-prong electrical outlets were installed in every room of every home without anyone thinking twice. Electricians wired entire houses this way, and families plugged in lamps, televisions, and appliances without imagining any risk. The outlets looked simple and clean, and that simplicity felt safe. But these outlets lacked a grounding wire, the critical safety feature that redirects stray electrical current away from appliances and human bodies. When something shorted inside an appliance or moisture crept into a plug, electricity had nowhere safe to go. People received shocks reaching for toasters, touching lamp switches, or unplugging cords from damp bathroom walls. Fires started silently behind walls where overloaded circuits sparked against wood framing. Investigators traced countless fires and electrocution deaths back to these outlets. When building codes caught up, regulators required grounded three-prong systems in new construction and demanded upgrades in older homes. Families realized the outlets they trusted for decades were quiet hazards hiding behind every faceplate. It is a sobering reminder that familiar parts of a house can carry dangers nobody sees until tragedy strikes. Kerosene space heaters without venting were a lifeline for families saving money during cold winters in the 1970s. People placed them in living rooms, bedrooms, and basements, watching the warm glow spread across the floor as the chill faded. The heaters felt practical and efficient, a quick solution when central heating could not keep up or when the oil bill climbed too high. Families gathered around them the way they might gather around a fireplace, trusting the warmth completely. But these heaters burned fuel indoors without any exhaust system, quietly releasing carbon monoxide and nitrogen dioxide directly into the air. In tightly sealed homes, the buildup could become deadly within hours. Some families went to sleep warm and never woke up, while others suffered headaches and confusion they could not explain. When investigators traced deaths to unvented kerosene heaters, regulators moved to ban the most dangerous models entirely. Families who relied on them for years were stunned to learn how close they had come to tragedy. Today, only properly vented heaters are allowed, but the memory of those silent dangers lingers. Lawn jarts with steel-tipped points were one of the most beloved backyard games of the 1970s, sold at department stores and set up on lawns across the country every summer. The game was simple. Toss a heavy, pointed dart toward a plastic ring on the ground and see who could land closest. Families played for hours, children ran barefoot through the grass, and nobody stopped to consider the weight of metal sailing through the air above their heads. The darts were designed to stick into the ground on impact, and that sharpness made them dangerous beyond measure. When a child ran into the path of a throw or a dart sailed off course, the results were catastrophic. Emergency rooms reported skull fractures, puncture wounds, and deaths that devastated entire neighborhoods. Parents who thought they were giving children harmless outdoor fun found themselves facing tragedy instead. After years of mounting injuries and highly publicized fatalities, the federal government banned lawn jarts entirely. Stores pulled them from shelves, and families quietly threw them away. It remains one of the clearest examples of how something designed for joy can carry a danger no one anticipated. PCB containing window caulking was applied around frames in homes throughout the 1970s because it stayed flexible, sealed tightly, and lasted far longer than older compounds. Contractors squeezed it into every gap, trusting it would keep drafts out and energy bills down. Homeowners appreciated how well it worked, never questioning what was inside. But polychlorinated biphenyls, the chemicals that gave caulking its durability, turned out to be profoundly dangerous. PCBs do not break down easily. They seep into surrounding materials, drift into the air as caulking ages, and accumulate in human tissue over time. Researchers linked long-term exposure to cancer, immune system damage, and developmental problems in children. When investigators tested older buildings, they found contamination spreading far beyond window frames into walls, flooring, and soil outside. Regulators classified PCB caulking as toxic waste, requiring professional removal teams in full protective gear. Families who felt proud of their sealed homes realized the material protecting them from cold was quietly poisoning them for years. Today, any renovation of an older building begins with testing for this invisible hazard. Lead water pipes and plumbing solder delivered drinking water to millions of homes throughout the 1970s, and nobody thought twice about turning on the tap. The metal was soft, easy to work with, and created tight, durable joints that lasted for decades. Plumbers trusted it, homeowners trusted it, and entire neighborhoods drank, cooked, and bathed using water that passed through lead every single day. The problem was invisible. Lead leached slowly into water, especially when pipes corroded or when water sat still overnight. Families filled glasses, made baby formula, and boiled pasta without any idea that every sip carried traces of poison accumulating in the body. Children absorbed it faster than adults, suffering damage to developing brains that could never be undone. When researchers connected widespread lead poisoning to household plumbing, the response was urgent. Regulators banned lead pipes and solder in new construction and launched programs to replace aging infrastructure. But for families who had already been exposed for years, the damage was done. Today, older homes still carry this hidden threat behind walls and under floors, waiting to be discovered. Chlordane foundation treatment was sprayed around the perimeters of homes throughout the 1970s as the ultimate defense against termites. Pest control companies promised long-lasting protection, and homeowners gladly paid to keep their wooden structures safe from insects that could hollow out a house from inside. The chemicals soaked into soil, seeped into basement walls, and created a barrier meant to last for decades. And it did last, but not the way anyone expected. Chlordane never broke down. It lingered in the ground, drifted into basements as vapor, and contaminated air inside homes for years after application. Families breathed it without knowing, and researchers linked the chemical to liver damage, neurological problems, and cancer. Some homes became so contaminated they were declared uninhabitable, their foundations permanently poisoned. When regulators banned Chlordane, The announcement came with grim recognition that cleanup was nearly impossible. Families who thought they were protecting their homes discovered they had invited a chemical guest that refused to leave. The soil around their foundations remained toxic long after anyone remembered the original treatment. Asbestos pipe insulation wrapped around hot water pipes and heating ducts in basements across the nation, keeping heat from escaping and protecting families from burns. The fibrous material looked sturdy, and contractors installed it in nearly every home built or renovated during the 1970s. Parents walked past it on their way to the laundry. Children played near it during basement games, and nobody imagined the quiet danger hiding inside. As insulation aged, it deteriorated. Fibers broke loose and drifted into the air, settling on clothes, toys, and every surface nearby. People breathed them without feeling a thing, never suspecting that microscopic particles were embedding deep in lung tissue. Decades later, doctors diagnosed mesothelioma, asbestosis, and lung cancers in people who could not understand how they were exposed. When investigators traced the source to basement insulation, the realization was devastating. Regulators banned asbestos in building materials and classified old pipe wrap as hazardous waste. Removing it now requires sealed barriers, respirators, and certified disposal. It is chilling to think that material meant to protect families carried a far deadlier threat. DDT garden spray was once considered a miracle for anyone tired of battling insects that destroyed vegetable patches and flower beds. Homeowners in the 1970s sprayed it generously across lawns, shrubs, and garden rows, watching pests vanish overnight. The chemical promised protection without effort, and families trusted it the way they trusted aspirin. Children ran through treated yards, pets rolled across sprayed grass, and nobody worried because the product was sold everywhere as perfectly safe. But DDT did not disappear after application. It seeped into soil, traveled through water, and accumulated in the bodies of animals and humans alike. Researchers discovered the chemical disrupted hormones, weakened eggshells in birds, and posed serious risks to human health with prolonged exposure. The damage spread far beyond any backyard, contaminating ecosystems in ways that took decades to understand. When regulators banned DDT, families who had used it for years were stunned. Gardens that once felt like sanctuaries seemed tainted by a chemical legacy that would linger for generations. It remains one of the starkest examples of how good intentions carry consequences nobody anticipated. Lead-glazed ceramic crockpots were treasured kitchen tools in the 1970s, sitting on counters and simmering family meals for hours while parents worked or ran errands. The glazes gave them a beautiful shine that made them look both rustic and refined, perfect for Sunday roasts and holiday gatherings. Families trusted these pots completely, filling them with soups, stews, and slow-cooked meats that fed everyone from toddlers to grandparents. Nobody imagined that the glaze itself was the problem. When acidic foods like tomatoes or wine simmered for hours against the ceramic surface, lead from the glaze leached directly into the meal. Families consumed it bite by bite, year after year, never suspecting that dinner was slowly poisoning them. Children were especially vulnerable, absorbing lead faster than adults and suffering damage that accumulated silently. When researchers tested old crockpots and found alarming lead levels, the warning spread quickly. Regulators banned lead glazes in cookware and urged families to discard anything that could not be verified as safe. It is deeply unsettling to realize that a pot meant to nourish families was quietly contaminating the very meals it prepared. Portable heaters without tip-over switches warmed bedrooms, living rooms, and basement workshops throughout the 1970s, glowing quietly in corners while families went about their evening routines. People positioned them near beds, couches, and curtains without a second thought, trusting the warmth they provided during long winter nights. The heaters were simple and affordable, exactly what families needed when central heating fell short or energy bills climbed too high. But these early models had no safety mechanism to shut off if they tipped over or got too close to something flammable. A bump from a child, a curious pet, or even a gust from an open door could send the heater tumbling onto carpet or fabric. Within minutes, Flames could spread through a room before anyone smelled smoke. Fire investigators traced countless house fires back to these unprotected heaters, documenting tragedies that happened while families slept. When regulators finally required tip-over switches and overheat protection, the older models were pulled from stores and marked as hazards. Families who had relied on them for years were stunned to learn how close they had come to disaster every single night. Hexachlorophene antibacterial soap was marketed as the ultimate protection against germs in the 1970s, sold in pharmacies and grocery stores as something every family needed. Parents used it on children, hospitals used it on newborns, and households kept it beside every sink as a daily defense against illness. The soap promised cleanliness beyond anything ordinary products could deliver, and families trusted that promise completely. But hexachlorophene absorbed through skin far more easily than anyone realized, especially in infants whose systems could not handle the chemical load. Reports surfaced of babies developing brain damage after repeated baths with products containing the compound. The connection was devastating. Something meant to protect the most vulnerable was causing irreversible harm. Regulators moved quickly once evidence became clear, banning hexachlorophene from over-the-counter products and restricting its use to prescription settings. Families who had scrubbed their children with this soap every day were horrified to learn what they had done. It remains one of the most painful examples of how a product marketed as safe can carry consequences no parent imagined. CFC-propelled aerosol sprays were found in every bathroom cabinet, kitchen drawer, and garage shelf throughout the 1970s. Hairspray, deodorant, air freshener, and countless cleaning products all relied on chlorofluorocarbons to push their contents out with that familiar hiss. People used them daily without hesitation, filling rooms with fine mists that settled on skin, hair, and every surface nearby. The convenience felt like progress, a modern solution that previous generations could never have imagined. But CFCs did not simply disappear after use. They rose into the atmosphere and began destroying the ozone layer, the invisible shield protecting all life on Earth from dangerous ultraviolet radiation. Scientists discovered a growing hole over Antarctica and traced it directly back to these everyday products. The realization was staggering. Millions of households were contributing to a global crisis with every spray. Regulators banned CFCs, and manufacturers scrambled to reformulate products that had been staples for decades. Families who had used these sprays without a thought suddenly understood how small daily habits can carry consequences stretching far beyond any single home. Toluene-based rubber cement was a household staple in the 1970s, kept in junk drawers and craft boxes for everything from school projects to quick repairs. The strong, distinctive smell filled rooms the moment the lid came off, and people used it liberally on paper, fabric, leather, and anything else that needed bonding. Children spread it across poster boards while parents patched shoes or fixed loose book bindings, all without ventilation or any thought of danger. But toluene is a powerful solvent that affects the brain and nervous system when inhaled. In poorly ventilated spaces, the fumes built up quickly, causing dizziness, headaches, and confusion that people often dismissed as nothing serious. Chronic exposure led to far worse outcomes, including memory problems and permanent neurological damage. When researchers documented these effects, regulators stepped in to restrict toluene in consumer products. Safer formulations replaced the old rubber cement, but families who had used it for years wondered what damage might already have been done. It is sobering to realize that something as simple as gluing a school project together once carried risks nobody bothered to mention. Lead fishing tackle and sinkers were carried in every angler's tackle box throughout the 1970s, small dense weights that helped lines sink quickly and casts travel farther. Fishermen handled them constantly, biting them onto lines with their teeth, rolling them between fingers, and tossing them into lakes and rivers without a second thought. The weight felt natural, almost satisfying, and nobody imagined that such a simple tool could cause harm. But lead is toxic to both humans and wildlife. Anglers who bit sinkers onto lines ingested small amounts with every fishing trip, while lost tackle accumulated on lake bottoms where birds and fish swallowed it. Waterfowl died by the thousands from lead poisoning, and researchers traced the contamination back to fishing weights scattered across waterways. When regulators began banning lead tackle in certain states, many anglers resisted at first, struggling to understand how something so traditional could be dangerous. Today, safer alternatives exist, but the memory of lead sinkers remains a quiet reminder that even simple outdoor traditions can carry hidden environmental and health costs that take generations to understand. Mercurochrome red antiseptic was dabbed onto every scraped knee, cut finger, and playground wound throughout the 1970s, leaving behind that distinctive bright red stain that children wore like badges of honor. Parents kept the little bottle in medicine cabinets alongside bandages and aspirin, reaching for it automatically whenever a child came running in with blood on their skin. The red color made wounds look dramatic and important, and the slight sting reassured everyone that the medicine was working. Nobody questioned what was inside the bottle or how it actually did its job. But Mercurochrome contained mercury, a toxic heavy metal that absorbed through broken skin and accumulated in the body over time. Researchers eventually documented the risks of repeated mercury exposure, especially in children whose developing systems were particularly vulnerable. When regulators banned Mercurochrome from over-the-counter sale, families were shocked to learn that their go-to first aid solution had been quietly introducing a poison with every application. The little red bottle that once symbolized parental care became another reminder that trust in familiar products does not always mean safety. Asbestos shingle siding covered millions of homes throughout the 1970s, offering durability, fire resistance, and a clean appearance that required little maintenance. Builders loved it because it lasted for decades without rotting, warping, or needing paint. Homeowners trusted it because it seemed like the smartest investment for protecting their families from the elements. The shingles came in various colors and textures, blending into neighborhoods where every house wore the same protective shell. But asbestos fibers do not stay locked inside materials forever. As siding aged, cracked, or weathered, microscopic particles broke free and drifted into the air. Families breathed them while gardening beneath eaves, children inhaled them while playing near exterior walls, and homeowners released clouds of fibers whenever they drilled or replaced damaged sections. Researchers linked asbestos exposure to deadly lung diseases, and regulators classified old siding as hazardous material requiring professional removal. Families who once felt proud of their sturdy exteriors suddenly faced costly remediation and the unsettling knowledge that their home's protective shell had been slowly harming them. Creosote-treated landscape timbers lined garden beds, terraced hillsides, and bordered driveways throughout the 1970s, offering a rustic look that blended naturally with outdoor spaces. The dark, oily wood resisted rot and insects far better than untreated lumber, making it the practical choice for any homeowner who wanted structures that would last. People built raised vegetable gardens with these timbers, planted flowers beside them, and let children play on benches constructed from the same material. The strong smell seemed like proof of protection, a sign that the wood would stand up to weather and time. But creosote is a mixture of chemicals that includes known carcinogens, and those compounds leach slowly into surrounding soil. Vegetables grown in beds framed with creosote timbers absorbed contamination through their roots. Children who touched the oily surface carried residue on their hands and clothing. When researchers documented the health risks, regulators banned creosote-treated wood for residential use. Families who had proudly built gardens with these timbers faced the difficult task of tearing everything out and starting over with safer materials. PBDE flame-retardant furniture, foam-filled couches, chairs, and mattresses throughout the 1970s, added by manufacturers who believed they were making homes safer from fire. The chemicals were invisible, odorless, and woven into the very cushions families sat on, slept on, and relaxed against every single day. Parents felt reassured knowing their furniture met fire safety standards, never imagining that the protection itself could be harmful. But PBDEs do not stay locked inside foam forever. They escape as dust, drift through household air, and settle on floors where children crawl and play. researchers discovered these chemicals accumulating in human blood, breast milk, and fatty tissue, disrupting hormones and affecting development in ways that took years to understand. The compounds persisted in the environment long after furniture was discarded, contaminating landfills and water supplies. When regulators finally restricted PBDES, manufacturers scrambled to find alternatives, but damage was already spreading through generations. Families who thought they were protecting their homes from fire had instead been absorbing chemicals that posed risks far more insidious than any flame. Carbon tetrachloride spot remover was kept in laundry rooms throughout the 1970s, trusted for its ability to lift stains that nothing else could touch. People dabbed it onto carpets, clothing, and upholstery without gloves or ventilation, believing it was just another household cleaner. The liquid evaporated quickly, leaving behind clean fabric and a sharp smell that faded within minutes. Nobody questioned what they were breathing. But carbon tetrachloride is profoundly toxic, attacking the liver and kidneys with even brief exposure. In enclosed spaces, the fumes concentrated quickly, and people inhaled doses far higher than anyone realized. Some users collapsed while cleaning, and others developed symptoms days later when internal damage had already taken hold. When regulators connected household poisonings to this cleaner, the ban came swiftly. Families who trusted it for years were stunned to learn that a bottle under the sink had been one of the most dangerous items in their home. Formaldehyde permanent press clothing filled closets throughout the 1970s, promising wrinkle-free convenience that busy families loved. Shirts and dresses came out of the dryer looking crisp, saving hours of ironing. People wore these clothes against their skin every day, never suspecting that the chemical keeping fabric smooth could cause harm. But formaldehyde is an irritant that triggers reactions in sensitive individuals, causing rashes, itching, and respiratory distress. Some developed symptoms after wearing new clothes once, while others built up sensitivity over months of exposure. Children with delicate skin were especially vulnerable, breaking out in rashes parents could not explain. When researchers documented the connection between permanent press treatments and health complaints, regulators began restricting formaldehyde levels. The convenience that felt like progress suddenly seemed less appealing when families understood the trade-off. Today, safer methods exist, but formaldehyde-treated clothing reminds us that comfort sometimes comes with hidden costs. Trichloroethylene correction fluid sat on desks in home offices throughout the 1970s, used to white out typing mistakes before word processors made corrections easier. The little bottles with brush applicators were familiar to anyone who typed letters or helped children with homework. People painted the white liquid over errors, blew on it to dry faster, and breathed in fumes without a second thought. The smell was sharp but brief, and nobody imagined it could be harmful. But trichloroethylene is a potent solvent that affects the nervous system when inhaled. Repeated exposure caused dizziness, headaches, and confusion that users often blamed on long work hours. In poorly ventilated spaces, fumes accumulated to dangerous levels. Researchers eventually linked the chemical to liver damage, and regulators restricted its use. Safer correction fluids replaced the old formulas, but families who had used them for years wondered what invisible damage might have accumulated with every brush stroke and breath. Heptachlor termite, an ant killer, was sprinkled around foundations and inside wall cavities throughout the 1970s, promising long-lasting protection against insects that threatened wooden structures. Homeowners applied it liberally, believing they were safeguarding their investment against costly damage. The powder seemed harmless, and pest control companies recommended it without hesitation. But Heptachlor did not stay where it was applied. It seeped into groundwater, contaminated soil for decades, and made its way into food supplies. Families drank water from wells tainted by treatments applied years earlier. Researchers linked Heptachlor to liver damage, immune disruption, and increased cancer risk. When regulators banned the chemical, contamination would persist long after the product disappeared. Homes treated with Heptachlor carried invisible residues that no cleaning could remove. It remains a clear example of how pest control can create problems worse than the insects it was meant to eliminate. Lindane lice treatment shampoo was prescribed to children for decades, applied directly to scalps, while parents believed they were solving a common childhood problem. The treatment was considered standard, recommended by pediatricians and school nurses who saw lice outbreaks as routine inconveniences. Parents massaged the shampoo into their children's hair, sometimes repeating treatments when infestations seemed stubborn. Nobody questioned whether a prescription product could be unsafe. But Lindane is a neurotoxin that absorbs through skin and accumulates in fatty tissue. Children who received multiple treatments developed seizures, tremors, and nerve damage that doctors could not explain. As reports accumulated, researchers traced symptoms back to Lindane exposure. Regulators restricted and eventually banned the shampoo for pediatric use, but families who trusted it wondered what effects their children might carry. The shampoo that seemed like responsible parenting became a reminder that medical treatments can harbor unexpected dangers. Nitrocellulose-coated paper chains hung in loops across 1980s living rooms, their shiny surfaces catching light and adding festive color to every corner. Children spent hours at kitchen tables cutting strips, gluing links together, and coating them with lacquer sprays that made the paper gleam like something from a department store display. The craft was a beloved holiday tradition, teaching patience and creativity while producing decorations the whole family could admire. What nobody realized was that nitrocellulose, the compound making that glossy finish possible, was essentially the same material used in early film stock notorious for fires. The coated chains hung near fireplaces, candles, and hot light bulbs, inches away from ignition sources that could transform innocent decorations into fast-spreading flames. Families strung them across rooms without understanding how quickly fire could race along those shiny links. When fire safety experts documented the risks of nitrocellulose in home crafts, the sprays were reformulated or discontinued. The cheerful paper chains that represented family togetherness became cautionary examples of flammable beauty. Driving home. Christmas trees on car roofs without tying them properly was almost a holiday sport in the 1970s. Families would buy a tree that was always 2 feet taller than the living room allowed, hoist it onto the roof by sheer force of will, and toss 1 or 2 loops of twine over it with a confidence that probably came from nowhere rational. The wind would whip through the branches as the car pulled onto the road, and everyone inside held their breath just a little, watching for any sudden wobble. Nobody thought about fines or traffic violations or the possibility of the tree tumbling dramatically into the street. It was just part of the adventure, part of the ritual of getting that perfect pine safely home. Today, though, even slightly unsecured loads can earn you a ticket on the spot. Highways and city streets have become strict zones of compliance, leaving no room for the messy charm of trial and error. But the memory of those rides home, filled with laughter and the smell of fresh pine creeping into the car, remains untouchable. Bright red candies, fruit punch, and even cake frosting glowed with it. Kids in the 1950s could spot it from across the store, the promise of something sweet and happy. No one questioned what made those reds so vivid, because back then, if it looked exciting, it had to be safe. Or so everyone thought. The dye gave cherry sodas their pop, lollipops their shine, and even some cereals their charm. But years later, scientists studying lab rats found a darker story. Red dye number 2 was linked to cancer. Suddenly, that harmless glow felt like a warning light. Parents panicked, companies reformulated, and shelves changed overnight. For many, it was the first time America realized that progress could have a price. The same foods that had made childhood magical had quietly carried a risk no one could see. Red dye number 2 became a symbol of innocence lost, a color too dangerous to keep. Arsenic-treated wood for fences and decks was once considered the smartest choice for any outdoor project, promising durability and resistance to rot. Termites and weathering grandparents used it to build backyard fences, raised garden beds, picnic tables, and decks meant to last for decades. To families at the time, this wood felt strong, dependable, and far superior to untreated lumber that softened or rotted too quickly. Homeowners took pride in these projects, believing they were investing in something long-lasting and practical. But the protection came from chromated copper arsenate, a preservative that contained real arsenic. As the wood aged, small flakes and dust particles washed into soil, onto hands, and even into household pets who wandered through the yard. Long-term exposure to the chemical was later linked to multiple health risks, including cancer and skin damage. When researchers connected these dangers to common household use, regulators swiftly banned arsenic-treated wood for residential projects. Many families who had spent weekends building fences were shocked to learn the material they used carried risks far beyond simple splinters. Over time, safer alternatives replaced the older wood, but the memory of those green-tinted boards still raises questions about how many people unknowingly worked with toxic materials. Today, they remind us that convenience can sometimes hide contamination in places we least expect. In 2009, Nestlé Toll House cookie dough, something nearly every American household trusted, became the center of a national panic. For decades, people could not resist sneaking a spoonful straight from the mixing bowl. It was childhood rebellion in its sweetest form, a taste of doughy, buttery comfort. But that year, hospitals began linking a mysterious wave of E. coli infections to unbaked Toll House dough. Investigators traced the bacteria to contaminated flour and eggs, something no one ever thought twice about. The news spread fast, and families across the country threw away tubs of dough from their refrigerators. It was a moment of disbelief. How could something so innocent, so normal, become dangerous? The recall changed food laws forever. New reformulation rules required pasteurization and clear warnings against eating raw dough, ending an era of guilty pleasure. Nestlé later reintroduced a safer version, but it never quite felt the same. People began to bake their cookies all the way through, no longer daring to take that secret taste. Still, the memory of licking the spoon while baking with family lingers for millions, a reminder that nostalgia often hides in the smallest, simplest moments. And sometimes those moments vanish overnight, not because we outgrow them, but because safety finally caught up to sweetness. Gym class in the 1970s was not just about push-ups or running laps. It was about public humiliation disguised as fitness. Students lined up in front of their classmates to be weighed, their numbers recorded out loud by teachers holding clipboards. The scale sat in the corner of every gym like a silent judge, and no one could escape its verdict. Fitness progress was what they called it, but it was really a ritual of comparison. Kids whispered, laughed, or cringed as each name was called. No one questioned why it mattered how much a child weighed, only that lighter meant better. For many, this was their first lesson in body shame, long before social media ever existed. Teachers claimed it built discipline, but it mostly built anxiety, especially for those who already felt different. Students still remember the metallic click of that scale, the scratch of pen against paper, and the eyes that followed them back to the bench. In a place meant to build confidence, self-worth was measured in pounds. Looking back, it is easy to see how cruel those moments really were. The Battlestar Galactica missile-firing action figures were supposed to be every young sci-fi fan's dream come true. The toy line mirrored the excitement of the television show, with detailed spaceships and figures that could actually shoot small plastic missiles. Kids loved the realism, until that realism turned deadly. The missiles were small enough to fit into a child's mouth, and tragically, one boy choked to death after accidentally inhaling a projectile. That single event led to a massive recall and a permanent change in toy safety design. From that moment on, most manufacturers removed missile-launching features or made projectiles too large to swallow. At the time, though, parents were outraged that something marketed as safe had taken such a dark turn. The figures themselves became infamous collector's items, frozen in history as a symbol of the industry's recklessness. What started as a celebration of science fiction imagination ended with a harsh reality check about just how dangerous realistic play could become. Teachers lighting up inside classrooms sounds unbelievable today, but in the 1970s it was as common as chalk dust. Many teachers had ashtrays right on their desks and a lit cigarette balanced between their fingers while they lectured. Smoke curled around overhead projectors, and the air was thick by the end of the day. Students sat quietly, breathing it all in, not daring to complain. Some teachers even used cigarettes as part of their persona. the cool teacher with rolled-up sleeves and a cloud of smoke overhead. It symbolized authority and adulthood, not addiction. Looking back, it is astonishing how normalized it was to fill a room of children with secondhand smoke. What we now call dangerous was once seen as sophistication. The classroom might have been filled with lessons, but the air itself was toxic. PCB-containing light-set transformers hummed quietly beneath Christmas trees in the 1980s, powering elaborate blinking patterns that made decorations feel alive and magical. Families plugged in multiple light strings, relying on small transformer boxes to regulate electricity and create the twinkling sequences everyone loved. The boxes sat on carpets, tucked behind tree stands, sometimes buried under presents where children crawled and played. Inside those unassuming plastic cases was oil containing polychlorinated biphenyls, industrial coolants that prevented overheating during long hours of operation. When transformers aged, cracked, or overheated, the PCB oil could leak onto floors, carpets, and hands of anyone who touched them. Families cleaned up mysterious oily residue without realizing they were spreading contamination that would linger for years. Studies eventually linked PCB exposure to cancer and neurological damage, prompting regulators to ban the compounds from consumer products. The little boxes that powered holiday magic became toxic relics requiring careful disposal. The twinkling lights they powered came with costs nobody understood until decades later. Using real candles in church pageants and school plays was one of the most beautiful and unnerving traditions of the 1970s. Children walked down aisles holding flickering flames while choirs sang softly, the warm glow reflecting off every wall and making the entire room feel holy and alive. Teachers handed out matches or lighters without hesitation, helping kids ignite candles they barely understood how to hold. There was a reverence in the room that even the adults could feel, a sense that the fire itself was part of the story. No one imagined disaster. They imagined tradition, history, and meaning. And for a few moments, every child felt trusted beyond their years. The scent of melted wax filled the air, becoming part of the memory itself. Today, though, open flames around children are banned in almost every school and most churches. Fire regulations leave no room for risk, even in the name of tradition. But anyone who stood there holding that tiny flame remembers how powerful it felt, how it transformed an ordinary evening into something unforgettable. Brominated vegetable oil, or BVO, was the secret ingredient that made 1950s fruit sodas look and taste so good. It kept the citrus flavor evenly mixed, preventing that oily layer from rising to the top. The chemistry was clever, the flavor refreshing, and the bright bottles flew off the shelves. For decades, no one questioned what brominated meant. It just sounded scientific, and science meant progress. But studies later revealed the truth. Bromine compounds did not just disappear. They built up in human tissue, especially fat, leading to headaches, memory loss, and nerve issues. It was found in everything from orange soda to sports drinks, hiding behind harmless-sounding labels. Teenagers drank it daily without a clue that it shared a chemical base with flame retardants. When that fact hit the headlines, even the most loyal soda drinkers turned queasy. The same chemical family used in flame retardants was floating in your orange soda. When the public finally learned, it was too late for many. BVO had been in use for over 30 years. The Food and Drug Administration eventually banned it, leaving soda makers scrambling for safer replacements. Still, those who grew up in that era can probably remember the taste: sweet, fizzy, and unknowingly toxic. Ecto-Cooler. Hi-C was pure childhood magic poured into a box. Inspired by the Ghostbusters craze of the 80s, it glowed with a radioactive green that no fruit on Earth had ever seen. It tasted like tangerine mixed with nostalgia and a hint of Saturday morning cartoons. Every kid in America wanted it in their lunchbox, and every parent knew exactly what that neon color meant: artificial dyes and plenty of sugar. It stained your tongue, your clothes, and sometimes even the kitchen counter, but no one cared. Kids sipped it like it was a secret potion, their own piece of Ghostbusters magic in liquid form. Years later, when regulations began restricting synthetic food colorings linked to hyperactivity and health concerns, the drink quietly disappeared. But it left behind a generation of kids who still swear it tasted better than anything since. For many, it was not just juice. It was a piece of their childhood, a reminder of how fun could come in the strangest colors. Even now, when someone finds an old box online or a commemorative re-release, it feels like opening a time capsule from a brighter, weirder world where even your drink looked like slime. Cadmium-plated dishware once sat proudly on dinner tables across the nation, decorated with bright reds, yellows, and oranges that made every meal feel a little more cheerful. Grandparents loved these plates because they were sturdy, vibrant, and sold everywhere from department stores to small local shops. Families used them daily for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, never imagining that something so colorful could carry such a serious threat. Back then, bright colors meant quality and charm, not danger. But cadmium does not stay locked inside ceramic glaze. Over time, especially when exposed to acids from food, the metal can leach out and seep directly into whatever is being eaten. Researchers eventually discovered that cadmium exposure could damage kidneys, weaken bones, and cause long-term health issues, even at low levels. This revelation shocked families who had relied on these plates for years. Regulators quickly moved to ban cadmium in dishware, forcing manufacturers to overhaul their production methods. Many people packed away their old sets, uncertain whether it was safe to keep them even as decorations. The contrast between the cheerful appearance and the hidden danger made these dishes one of the more unsettling household discoveries of the era today. They serve as a reminder that beauty and safety do not always go hand in hand, especially in a time when fewer regulations existed to protect everyday families. Cafeterias in the 1970s had their own set of unspoken laws, and one of the worst was the clean plate rule. Children were told they could not leave the lunch table until every bite was gone. It did not matter if the food was cold, mushy, or nauseating. Wasting food was a sin, teachers said, especially when kids in other countries are starving. Supervisors patrolled the aisles, watching trays closely, and those who hesitated were scolded. Kids learned tricks, spreading food thinly to make it look eaten, hiding vegetables under napkins, or trading unwanted bites to friends who were hungrier or braver. The cafeteria became a quiet battlefield between appetite and authority, and everyone had their own small rebellion. Years later, many adults realized they still cleaned their plates out of habit, not hunger, a lesson they never asked to learn. Some kids tried hiding peas under napkins or sneaking food into milk cartons, but they usually got caught. The rule was meant to teach gratitude, but it often taught disgust. Many children developed unhealthy relationships with food, learning to eat even when full or to associate meals with pressure and guilt. For a generation, the school lunchroom was not just noisy and chaotic. It was a small theater of forced obedience. Today, the idea of punishing a child for refusing to eat would be unthinkable. But back then, finishing your plate was not just expected, it was mandatory. Slap bracelets were everywhere in the late 1980s. Classrooms, malls, playgrounds. Kids collected them by the dozen, showing off neon colors and wild patterns. The trick was simple. Snap the straight band against your wrist and watch it curl around perfectly. Some kids took it a step further, slapping them across backpacks, arms, and even faces in playful fights. The noise of a dozen bracelets snapping at once could fill an entire hallway, driving teachers insane. For a few glorious years, they were the ultimate symbol of rebellion, something that annoyed adults but made you instantly cool. But beneath that fabric lay a thin strip of sharp-edged metal. Over time, the covering wore down or tore, revealing the raw steel underneath. Soon, reports of cut wrists and sliced skin started pouring in. Some schools banned them outright, calling them distracting and dangerous. Still, the craze was unstoppable for a while. Every kid wanted to hear that satisfying snap, no matter how many warnings came from teachers or parents. They were the perfect mix of rebellion and style, a fashion statement that literally left its mark. bare wire extension cords for outdoor displays snaked across 1980s lawns, powering elaborate light arrangements that transformed ordinary homes into neighborhood attractions. Families ran these cords under bushes, across walkways, and up trees, connecting dozens of light strands to single outlets pushed far beyond their intended capacity. The urgency to create the brightest display often meant using whatever cords were available, including older models with damaged insulation or exposed copper never designed for outdoor moisture. Rain, snow, and morning dew soaked into worn sections where bare wire waited to deliver shocks to anyone who touched them. Children playing in yards sometimes grabbed cords while running, pets chewed through casings left across grass, and adults adjusting displays received jolts ranging from startling to dangerous. House fires started when overloaded connections sparked against dry leaves or wooden siding. When electrical codes finally caught up with holiday enthusiasm, regulations required weatherproof ratings and ground fault protection. The festive displays that brought neighborhoods together also brought dangers nobody fully appreciated. Using asbestos-based fake snow for decor sounds unthinkable today, but in the 1970s it was still floating around in attics, storage boxes, and leftover holiday supplies from even earlier decades. Families sprinkled it across mantels, nativity scenes, and Christmas village displays without a hint of hesitation because it looked stunningly real. It clung beautifully, stayed in place, and made every surface look winter-kissed, even if the weather outside refused to cooperate. Most people never imagined that the soft white powder carried risks far beyond messiness. The word asbestos simply did not trigger panic yet, at least not in the way it does today. Back then, you were more focused on making your holiday decor look as magical as possible, especially if you were working on a budget and wanted your home to feel special. Today, possession or use of anything containing asbestos can bring legal trouble, health warnings, and removal orders. It is one of those dramatic shifts where science taught us something we wish we had known earlier. But when people look back at old photos, they do not remember the danger. They remember the tiny hillside of white powder beneath the ceramic houses, the shimmer on the mantel, and how perfectly it tied the whole scene together. Prepackaged luncheon meats were a post-war convenience that fit neatly into America's new rhythm. Busy days, quick lunches, no waste. Sliced, sealed, and ready to eat, these meats were the modern worker's dream. They filled sandwiches, lunchboxes, and picnic baskets across the nation. What no one realized was that heating them could trigger a dangerous reaction. The nitrates used to preserve their bright pink color produced nitrosamines, chemical compounds linked to cancer. Commercials showed happy families eating these sandwiches in spotless kitchens, while factories quietly churned out meats laced with preservatives no one could pronounce. It was the dawn of the convenience age, when speed and shelf life mattered more than nutrition. And like so many mid-century innovations, it took years before anyone asked what we were actually putting in our bodies. For years, people fried or broiled their sandwiches, unknowingly creating toxins right on their stovetops. Once scientists uncovered the truth, the industry was forced to reformulate, and entire brands vanished overnight. Luncheon meat never quite recovered its innocence. What was once a symbol of post-war efficiency became a reminder that convenience can carry a hidden cost. It might sound strange now, but the original Kinder Surprise egg from Europe was once one of the most exciting treasures a child could find on a store shelf. Imagine peeling back the shiny foil, breaking open that sweet chocolate shell, and discovering a tiny toy inside, something to build or collect. It was more than candy. It was an experience that made every trip to the grocery store feel like an adventure. But the United States government saw something else inside those eggs: danger. The small toys were hidden completely within the chocolate, making them a choking hazard, especially for children who bit too eagerly. The Food and Drug Administration stepped in, declaring that no food could contain non-nutritive items inside it. Parents protested, children cried, and the eggs vanished before most Americans ever got to try one. What survived were distant memories and imported stories about a forbidden treat, the kind you could only find overseas. Even today, the thought of biting into one feels a little rebellious, a little nostalgic, as if breaking the law never tasted so sweet. Fluoroscope shoe-fitting machines were once the height of innovation in shoe stores across the nation, turning an everyday errand into a futuristic experience. Grandparents remember sliding their feet into those wooden boxes and peering through a viewing window to see the glowing green outline of bones inside their shoes. It felt exciting, scientific, and even fun, especially for children who had never seen anything like it. What no one knew was that the glowing image came from direct exposure to X-rays. Each use delivered radiation straight to the feet, legs, and even the eyes of whoever looked through the viewer. Over time, scientists discovered the long-term dangers, linking the repeated radiation blasts to burns, bone damage, and even cancer. Regulators eventually stepped in and removed these machines from stores, but only after decades of widespread use. Those machines remain one of the most striking examples of how technological excitement can overshadow safety. In the 1970s, candy was not just candy. It was curiosity, risk, and play. That is why a strange little product called Love Drops gum caused such a stir. Marketed as an aphrodisiac, it claimed to make you feel bold, confident, and maybe even romantic. Teenagers dared each other to try it, giggling in convenience store aisles as they handed over a few coins for a pack. The gum's packaging promised excitement, but no one really knew what was inside. That mystery was part of its allure. Later testing revealed that Love Drops contained unregulated herbal extracts and stimulants that acted like mild drugs. The Food and Drug Administration quickly stepped in, banning its sale nationwide. Parents were horrified, schools issued warnings, and the candy disappeared as suddenly as it arrived. But for those who remember the era, Love Drops was not just about the gum. It was about the spirit of experimentation that defined the 70s, a time when products flirted with the line between fun and forbidden. Looking back, it feels almost innocent compared to what followed, but it was the first sign that even in the candy aisle, the world was beginning to take pleasure and danger a lot more seriously. Fashion was rebellion in the 1970s, and for girls, something as simple as wearing pants could get them sent home. Many schools enforced strict dress codes requiring dresses or skirts below the knee. Jeans, slacks, or anything resembling male clothing were banned in the name of modesty. A girl wearing pants was often called disrespectful, even immoral. Yet it was also an era when women were fighting for equal rights outside the classroom, and school dress codes became a quiet battleground for that same fight. Some girls refused to change, others were suspended, and a few made local headlines for challenging the rules. When these codes finally started to fall away, it was not because schools suddenly became modern. It was because students refused to back down. What was once labeled inappropriate became a symbol of progress. The skip-it was supposed to be harmless fun, a simple plastic ring around your ankle connected to a ball that spun as you jumped. The goal was to skip over it without tripping, counting rotations with each pass. It was the kind of toy that looked safe until it was not. Every playground had that one kid who took it too far, turning the skip-it into a competitive sport. The plastic ball would smack the pavement like a drum, echoing across recess while lines of kids waited for their turn. It was all fun until someone missed a jump, tripped, and landed hard, usually to the sound of laughter before the nurse was called. The hard plastic ball could easily clip ankles, shins, or even teeth if things went wrong. Many kids learned the pain of getting tangled mid-swing, tumbling onto the pavement in tears. Despite the bruises, it became a playground favorite, with competitions to see who could skip it the longest. Teachers grew tired of the chaos, and some schools banned it outright. Still, its catchy jingle and simple design made it unforgettable. The skip-it may have been dangerous, but it was also pure 1980s energy, loud, competitive, and just a little bit reckless. Benzene-dipped pine cone ornaments appeared on Christmas trees throughout the 1980s, their preserved natural beauty adding rustic charm to holiday decorating. Craft stores sold them by the bag, and families collected them from parks and backyards, dipping them in solutions that kept them looking fresh and sometimes adding pleasant scents. The benzene-based solvents used in commercial preservation penetrated deep into the cone scales, preventing decay and giving them that slightly glossy appearance. Parents helped children tie ribbons around the stems, handling the treated cones repeatedly without gloves or thought of chemical exposure. The ornaments hung on trees near warm lights, releasing vapors that accumulated in closed rooms throughout the season. Some families noticed headaches or dizziness during decorating sessions, but blamed stuffy rooms rather than the cones. When researchers identified benzene as a known carcinogen linked to blood cancers, the preservation methods were abandoned. The natural ornaments that connected families to outdoor beauty became symbols of how toxic chemicals infiltrated even simple traditions. If any of these forgotten hazards stirred a memory, share your story in the comments, tap like to help others discover what was hiding in their homes, and subscribe so you never miss the history we thought we left behind.